Abusua somunim say ha dey concern headquarters yetena se a nsem no baby a ehye bia no ye be ba besom yahwefo ne yetiefo na ene ye do utu kwan kakra yenko UK yenko tie nsem ekoso ya African ni ba ko ene UK law na ohwe screen no so a na papa ye odaso yi oye former deputy senator Emma Nigeria edinya dodo na enim no Senator Ike Ekweremadu nti ohwe mfonyi no so na papa yi odaso yi ene ne yere ene doctor ni ba ko ene nipaton a etwemu dada yenyina enim se a etwemu yi papa yi ne yere ne doctor ni ba ko abo ntumpo ama brantie bi nka enye nyame ne ba na afemu a kasemri obi enim ne ono so ato no semri na mamembo wasem no munchiremu kakra ansana Yakob asem no munchiremu ne se abrantie no odidwa ewo Lagos Nigeria abonten so na papa hia no na papa yi ne baba yare potokasemu ne yebeka se o kidney failure yibi nti papa yi ema abrantie no £7,000 say or the no call UK na wasesana abrabo wasesana shebrama no na abrantie na chirema wonhu nienti poten a okopie mu UK hospital so ye kasa ye kosesana shebremu no ono so ejepene edi echi we na okoshia doctor ni bi ewo ho ma doctor na kire se abrantie no ne tibie na ne ye nkire se nyo oba bidi ana juma oba bidi wo ne ne de hu nkomo nti ombo modern no tweme a police fo na onyomu ndi nkomo.
The alleged plan hit problems when the Ekweremadus took the 21-year-old to start the transplant process.
The court heard how the victim came to this London hospital and that he didn't understand why he'd been brought to the UK until he met a doctor here. That doctor said the young man was not an appropriate donor because he hadn't had any advice about the risks of surgery and didn't have the funds he'd need for lifelong care. So the operation was refused.
We know only a police for coding coma, police for bomb modern, deputy senator Ikweredu, any doctor, na ene court at Nase, yade asemno fana akugu. Nim say on the 5th of May no the final judgment ebeba abontin na we na impenyifo bi akasa achirem say papa yi yanhwe ne ya obetumi akọ life imprisonment lawyer edema brantie no edensem bi ebetu dwa.
With these things he can't go back to who he used to be. He can't come to Nigeria freely, obviously. He cannot walk the streets of Nigeria. The cheerful part of it is that he's excited that he was able to stand up for himself.
Tina Abrantie no lawyer no chemu say ni akosi di Abrantie no ontumi embe nante Nigeria hosa akwa esanse amanfo de omonsa betenetene so ahwekra na obi ekuna ato baabi na onse asem sise ya ye wo mranimfo a omutumi kyekye nsem no mu ema wo ti ase we nti mpenyimfo esanso ene mranim ni baako edi nkoma on tumi kyekye nsem no mu no ne brofo no kan no niam ne onyina ye beti ase bi nti o de ma yentie sa yentie papa yi ne brofo no ye ba ye de nsem no mu nkyeremu ebekoso.
Well, it's not that strange because we have certain laws in Nigeria, whether it's the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act of 2015 and then the NAPTIP Act of 2015 as amended. These laws also criminalized all forms of trafficking for whatever purpose, in this case especially for the purpose of exploiting an individual in terms of taking organs for whatever reason, whether for transplant or for sale. So these are the same standards we have in Nigeria. While this is coming in this manner, it's because of the high-profile nature of the personality, and then to also think about the African empathy that is spread across this, thinking that these are parents who are trying to save their daughter. Of course, and unfortunately, the British court did not see that as any point in any way to mitigate the accusations against them. Ekweremadu is just a victim of somewhat nearly poor legal advice and a refusal of his home country, Nigeria, to offer him any serious assistance. If you look at the provisions of the Modern Slavery Act, particularly Section 2, which is instructive to his conviction, it's crafted in such a manner that no one and anybody who has been accused of being part of a human trafficking for the purpose of exploitation of organs can hardly escape. And now, if the lawyers realize that so quickly, they ought to have gone into certain arrangements that would have mitigated the kind of possible punishment Ekweremadu will face. Ekweremadu, yes, is likely, if he were to be convicted, if he's convicted, I haven't seen the judgment, but from the reports that I've read, if he's going to be sentenced based on the provisions of the Modern Slavery Act, it is likely to go for life imprisonment, because Section 2 of the law provides that irrespective of consent of the person involved, or irrespective of the age of the person, because if you look at the time Ekweremadu was arrested, the brouhaha on the social media was that, oh, but the guys first claimed he was a teenager, and then that's the reason why the UK authorities moved against Ekweremadu. It was immaterial, and it doesn't matter if the man even willingly consented. The way many Nigerians at that time were, at the time Ekweremadu was arrested, they were willing, they were shouting all over the place that please, Ekweremadu, they were ready to offer themselves free of charge, but his country was against him. There was no, the judge referred to the fact that there was nobody, even from his own family, that was willing to donate organ for his child. And then, on top of that, he was totally abandoned by his government. But in Ekweremadu's case, we saw a country that was virtually happy that Ekweremadu was arrested. They made representations to the UK court that the man should not be given granted bail. And on top of that, his own government initiated proceedings to seize his property back home, knowing that he could not brief a lawyer, knowing that he was in detention. Certainly, the appeal process will be activated if the lawyers consider it necessary. But again, the pronouncement of the court, it takes immediate effect, so he proceeds immediately to prison, and without. But you see, interestingly, it doesn't give the option of fine. There would have been an option of fine if the procedure adopted initially was negotiated. If it was just a summary trial procedure, whereby if he had pleaded guilty and said there were certain mistakes, there were certain misunderstanding, he didn't know what was involved. But for his lawyers to put up a show of defense, to now take the public time and waste public resources for weeks, and then to come up with an indictable conviction. It's going to be very difficult.
Nti ura Frank ena hotel nkano Frank Tete ono wachim tete nti ene de megidi se ye nyina yete na wo de one senior kan na no kire se papa yi anase mi bae ai se oman no eyi na ma timamufo e wo Nigerian so eyi na ma na nsem no ebi esida na esiye no aban na nkasa de ne huji mu ma oboaye sanso na ne lawyer fo ne omu di na chiko no lawyer fo na amwa no munim sa asem ne ye no kure na mo ahwe na mo aka asem ne na ye wie bibia ntemtem so afi na lawyer fo na akotwintwin sem mu akotwitwimu ama asem na ye nwu na nti sese papa ne de ne ho akedwa mu pa ya nhwe ne yi a ono ne yere ne doctor ni nyina na ebia life imprisonment on betumi akobi.
And that's because this is the first case where a conviction has been secured using the organ harvesting element of the Modern Slavery Act, a relatively new piece of legislation brought in 2015. But prosecutors have been criticised for the lack of convictions they've secured under it. Ike Ekweremadu, Beatrice Ekweremadu and Obina Obeta will be sentenced on the 5th of May.
Na senia mpenyifo ese no May 5th the final judgment no ebeba asem we betumi ato obia betumi ato nti slave trade no muma ye momodin na obia ntwe ne ho emfim wonso memma men disike ni brechi na wonso ohun koka edwem na make how say aha Kobije the blogger bomodin na subscribe to channel no like share eja comment ne be ya obi nso ebenya asem no bi ayeden ate makraw.